Alright guys, so we're going to be looking at 7.3.2, add integers on page 203. So that's the 7th grade textbook, chapter 3, lesson 2, add integers. So make sure that you write that along the top of your page, and then whenever you're done you can move on to the next slide. Pause the video if you needed. The first thing we're going to look at is vocabulary startup. It says integers like 2 and -2 are called opposites because they are the same distance from 0 but on opposite sides. Complete the graphic organizer about opposites. So what I want for you to do is just to copy down this box here, and they've given us the example of +3, so I want you to draw this number line and then mark off +3, and you can put the dot above because you know I like to do that, and then I want you to show the opposite. So what is the opposite? What's the counterpart that goes with +3? Come up with a real world example, and then we'll come up with a math example. Alright, so maybe a real world example, and of course you should have the dot above the -3. Maybe a real world example would be something like taking 2 steps forward and then 2 steps back. You know, you do the opposite and you get back to where you started, that kind of idea. A math example would be I climbed up the hill 3 miles and then I went back down the hill 3 miles. So I went a +3 because I'm going up, and then I went -3 to go back down. Two integers are opposites are also called additive inverses. So I want you to use this vocabulary here. Say additive inverses. So you can show this as vocab. The additive inverses are two integers that are opposites. The additive inverse property states that the sum of any numbers and its additive inverse is 0. So you can show 2 plus a -2 on the number line, and just like I was talking about with the real world example, you take 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, you're right at 0. So 2 plus a -2 ends up being 0. And you're welcome to pretty much copy down this whole section here. I think it's a really, really good example. That 2 plus a -2, which is its additive inverse, or its opposite, would make 0. And what you would have seen in your, as you were doing the inquiry lab, would have been what they called 0 pairs. That the positive and the negative go together and they make 0. The positive and the negative go to 0 together and they make 0. So in this example, we've got a really loud frog in here. Oh my gosh. Did you hear that frog? Uh-oh, kids are trying to come in. I guess I'll have to stop recording. Alright, so here are the answers for A, B, and C. Again, same signs, add and keep. So I just added the numbers and then kept the signs the same. So these were all negatives. The next ones are going to be with different signs. So add integers with different signs. It says to add integers with different signs, you subtract their absolute values. The sum is positive if the positive integer's absolute value is greater, and negative if the negative integer's absolute value is greater. So just examples I think are easier to look at. So in this example, notice that the larger number, absolute value of course, because negatives would always be smaller if I was talking about regular numbers, absolute value, 9 is bigger than 4. So 9 has a positive sign to it, so my answer is going to be positive. In this example, my biggest number is my 9, and my 9 is negative. So that means in turn that my answer will end up being negative. So I'm going to subtract, but ignoring the signs, I'm going to subtract. If they're different signs, subtract, and then I'm going to keep the sign of the higher number, absolute value, okay? And when I say absolute value, because we know -9 is actually smaller than 4, but when I'm saying just think of it as absolute values, 9 is the bigger number, and the sign that goes with 9 is negative in the second example here. So when you add integers with different signs, you start at 0 and then move right for positive integers and move left for negative integers. So the sum of p plus q is located at distance Q, absolute value of Q from P. All right, let's see. They give us some examples here. Actually, let me have you write this down. So now I'm going to have you write different signs subtract. Okay? Sorry, hold on just a second. Let me just pause the video. All right, so different signs subtract. And then we're going to say take the sign. Oops, I got to get up here. Take the sign of, hold on, I got to sing this song for you now. Same signs add and keep, different signs subtract. Take the sign of the higher number absolute value. Your answer will be exact. Okay, maybe that'll work. So sign of the higher absolute value. Higher number, and then in parentheses, absolute value.
You're right.
I know. All right, so different signs subtract. Take the sign of the higher number, absolute value. And remember that we say absolute value because, of course, a -9 would be smaller than a +4, but because we're talking about absolute values, 9 is the bigger number, and I take the sign of the negative number then. All right, next. So some examples. All right, so for example 3, where it says 5 plus -3, using the number line, they're saying, okay, you always start at 0, and you do +5, which takes you over here. Then you're doing -3, which, you know, is the opposite direction, so you go this direction, -3, and you end up at +2. Now, if you can just pay attention to my words that I'm saying, same signs add and keep, different signs I'm going to subtract and take the sign of the higher number. Now in this, and remember it's absolute value. So 5 in this case is bigger than 3, so I know that my answer is going to be positive. So I'm just going to subtract 5 minus 3, and my answer 2 will be positive. Over here I've got -3, so with their number line they went to the left -3 and then added 2, so they went to the right for +2. And so I end up at -1. But if I'm going with the rule I told you, I see that the larger number is my 3, and that's a negative, and so I know my answer is going to be negative. At this point, I'm just going to subtract 3 minus 2, and that gets 1. I know it's going to be -1 because 3 is my bigger number, and it's a negative number. So going back to that rule, that's where I'm coming up with my answers. Another way of doing this is, let's say we've got 5 positives, and I'm going to take away -3. So I can't just put in there -3. I have to put in my 0 pairs. Oops. No, that doesn't work out the same. That was something else. Never mind. Just kidding about that one. I would take away 3, so 1, 2, 3, and I'm left with 3 positives. Whereas if I had 3 negatives and I'm adding 2, oh, I get it now. Sorry. Okay, I got the, okay, here, sorry. I'm just looking at this for the first time. And I'm adding -3s. These make 0 pairs, and I'm left with 2 positives in the end. If I have -3 and I'm adding 2 positives, I take away my 0 pairs, and I'm left with 1 negative left over. Look at that. I figured it out. All right. Sorry, I was thinking of when we're going to do subtracting, so just ignore that mistake. All right. Now, example number 5 says 7 plus a -7. Again, those are opposites, 7 and -7, so they're going to make 0. And when I've got -8 plus 3, I've got 8 negatives and then 3 positives. So if you're using the signs, you've got, 8 positives, and then you've got 3 negatives. Oh, it was the opposite. Sorry. I'll get with the program. People are distracting me in my classroom. Yeah, I'm talking about you guys. All right, so then this one cancels out, this one cancels out, and this one cancels out, so I'm left with 5 negatives. Or you can do just the rules, different signs subtract. I'm just going to do 8 minus 3 is 5. Take the sign of the higher absolute value. In this case, it's -8, so it's going to be a -5. This one, Ooh, I like this. This is longer. So what they said was when they give you a longer problem like 2 plus a negative 15 plus a negative 2, you can use commutative property to change the order, and you can do 2 plus a negative 2, which instantly cancels each other out, and then you have your negative 15 left. Otherwise, you can do your 2 pluses, 15 negatives, and then 2 negatives, and you take away the 2 positives, 2 negatives, because they zero pair out, and you're left with the 15 negatives left. All right, so you're going to do F, G, and H. Pause the video now and go ahead and do those. All right, so even though 10 and 12 are not in order to subtract like we normally would, we're just going to be doing 12 minus 10 because different signs subtract. So that leaves me with 2. And then the larger number, absolute value of course, is the 12, which is a negative. See how I did that really fast? So for this one, negative 13 plus 18, I'm going to do 18 minus 13, which is 5. And then which one is the bigger value? The positive 18 is the bigger value, so it's going to be positive 5. For this one, I'm going to do step at a time. I know that my negative 6 and my positive 6 cancel out, and so I'm left with negative 14. Otherwise, I can do same signs, add and keep. So that would be negative 20 plus 6, different signs subtract, take the sign of the higher number, and there we go, I got the same answer. The last example is a real-world example here of a roller coaster. Starts at point A. It goes up 20 feet, down 32 feet. Okay, so up 20, down 32, and then up 16. Write an addition sentence that finds the height at point B in relation to point A. So we added 20, then we subtracted 32, because when we go down that's subtracting, and then we added 16. And so when we put all those together, different signs subtract. That would be negative 12 plus 16. Different signs subtract again will be 4, and this one is a positive, so 4 is my positive answer. Ooh, I like that one. All right, now you're going to do I. The temperature is negative 3. An hour later it drops 6 degrees, and 2 hours later it rises 4 degrees. Write an equation that expresses and describe the situation, then find the sum and explain its meaning. All right, what I really like is that they've thrown some extra stuff in here, like how many hours it takes. Basically, it starts at negative 3, it drops negative 6, here. Then it drops negative 6, and then it rises positive 4, because positive 4 is a rise. Now we just put all these together to figure this out. So part A that we needed to figure out was writing the addition expression, which is this. Then we can find the sum by saying, okay, same signs, add and keep. So I add 3 and 6 and keep the negative sign. And then these are going to be different signs, so I subtract and take the sign of the higher absolute value, which is the 9. And so my answer is negative 5 degrees. All right, and that ends 7.3.2. I'll see you in school. Oh, I forgot to sing you the song. Again, same signs, add and keep, different signs subtract. Take the sign of the higher number, absolute value. Your answer will be exact. You're welcome.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.